Hello, DM Geezer Jim here, continuing along on Uncaged Faces of Sigil, our great, wonderful NPC book that tells stories of lots of different creatures, lots of different personalities, and through doing so, gives you a good view of adventuring in Planescape, gives you a snapshot into a day in the life in Sigil, gives you a lot of really good information while providing some outstanding non-player characters for use. It's an older book, published in '93, I think. That's back in video one. Go watch that if you haven't. All joking aside. Thanks for hanging out. We're doing another episode. In case you haven't noticed through this series, these NPCs are listed alphabetically, which means some of the really cool ones like Shemeshka and Zadara are a little bit farther into the back of the book, but that's okay. This particular story is about Fel. Fel is a Dabu, depending on which one. The strange race, native and unique to Sigil proper. So this is our first kind of look into that point of view, the servitors, as it were, the workers, the strange beings that keep Sigil running, the guys that build and destroy everything at the behest of the Lady of Pain. They've been in the background, but this kind of brings these guys up to the forefront. Now, Fel is even more so unique, but let's get to the story and we'll talk about him a little bit. All right, so Fel. In Sigil, there's a cutter named Fel who's far from ordinary. He's a Dabu, and the weak and fearful dare not to speak his name, for he's known through the cage as the Burk who turned stag on the Lady of Pain. Some folks hurry across the street when they see Fel coming. Fact is, he's easy to spot. Sure, he looks just like his brethren, tall and thin, with purplish gray skin, a thick tuft of cloud-white hair, and two goat-straight horns at the top of his head, flanked by a second pair resembling those of a ram. He still dresses like a Dabu, too, donning a loose burgundy robe that swings as he moves. But whereas the other Dabu sweep along an inch or so above the streets, neither walking nor flying, Fel's feet touch the ground. He even stumbles from time to time, and he smiles good-naturedly as he dusts his silk robe clean. What's more, Fel is quite social. Plenty of Burks are spooked when he nods, waves, or grins as he passes by. All other Dabu routinely ignore the citizenry as they collect garbage, reset cobblestones, and trim back razor vine throughout the city. And if it troubles Fel to be ostracized by his fellow Dabu and feared by half the cage, he never shows it. The silent picture symbol that appears above his head when he speaks gives no sign of anger. It's Fel's symbols that earn him a living now that he's been banished from the underground warrens of the Dabu. He runs a small outdoor shop on Red Wind Road in the Market Ward. Just look for the black lightning bolt in the white oval, Fel's symbol for himself. There he makes his airy pictures graft themselves to a Burke's arm, shield, or cloak, a permanent, vibrant tattoo, nearly as real as life, created to the customer's exact wishes. Customers who have trouble communicating with Fel are handed a thin guide to Dabu symbols, an early work of the ill-end translator Mallory. Mallory is one of Fel's first clients, and she created a small translation guide specifically for Fel. Of course, that guide later blossomed into her famous work, the Dabu Common Phase book, but Fel still uses her original well-worn volume, perhaps for sentimental reasons. Once in a while, Fel's superb tattoos can be dangerous. Chant in the Ward tells of a time a pompous paladin from Arcadia wanted to commemorate his victory over a Merilith with a tattoo of the fiend on his shoulder. Somehow, though, the six-arm picture grew into a real fiend that tore the startled sod to bits. That incident hasn't diminished Fel's business any, as more than lucky cutters seen a useful tattoo take on solid form. A tired bag of platinum, a needed gate key, or a rare blossom that cures the victim of the river Styx. Sure, the stuff turns back into air after a few hours, but that's more than enough time for Assad to get his use out of it. Of course, merchants in the bazaar are none too happy when a payment of Fel-made jink disappears from their till. But most don't go after the Dabu. After all, the lady's bladed shadow might soon darken Fel's door, and no one wants to be around when that bill comes due. Sages can't puzzle out how Fel works his magic, but they suspect it has something to do with his fall from grace. See, the harmonium might arrest a Burke for saying so, but the Shattered Temple in the lower ward used to be the Great Temple of Doors. It was a grand palace dedicated to Eoskar, the god of portals, who for a time claimed half the planewalkers in the cage amongst his worshippers. Eoskar's power grew, threatening to claim the entire city of Doors, but still the lady did nothing, until Fel boldly declared himself the portal god's priest. Eoskar's withered husk now floats on the astral, his temple destroyed, his image stricken from the cage, but Fel remains. Shunned by the rest of his kind, barred from official duties, consigned to walk upon the ground, Fel seems to have been defrocked, yet he is alive. Does the lady let him live as a warning those who might flaunt her will? Does she fear that slaying one of her agents might stir the embers of rebellion amongst the others? A growing number of signers suspect that Fel is a proxy of the portal god immune to the lady's wrath, though to hold this view publicly is to invite a beating for the Harmonium and the Mercy Killers. Thus, in secret back rooms and safe houses, signers known as the Will of the One assemble to watch Fel's vivid tales of Eoskar's glory. The Dabus speaks with such intensity that 3 or 4 symbols, harmless ones thankfully, usually take real form by the night's end. The goal of the Will of the One is to restore Eoskar to life through the force of thought, that he might claim his rightful place as Master of Sigil. Excuse me. Fel has recently joined the group, and now he's often seen with Omot, the power-hungry Linqua, being courted as a likely vessel for Eoskar's energy. To the signers, Fel's a symbol of strength, courage, and hope. See, he somehow gained the ability to cast any pre-spell related to interplanar travel. He and the signers are certain those spells flow directly from Eoskar, proof indeed of the portal god's power over the lady. When Fel's tattoo shop is closed and he has no speaking engagements, a body might run across him deep in the Hive Ward, breaking over the ooze portals that litter the filthy streets. Many a careless traveler strayed too near a known brown puddle of goo, only to be yanked through by ooze mephits on a one-way trip to the para-elemental plane of ooze. Even though the other Dabu calmly sweep debris from the streets of Sigil, they leave the ooze portals alone. Fel, perhaps to recapture a shred of his past, perhaps as a sign of Eoskian worship, seals up the dangerous portals with brick and mortar. The cutthroats of the hive leave him be, never knowing when the lady might come calling. Is it Fel's alliance with the signers that lend real form to his imagined symbols, or is it a mysterious gift from Eoskar, some portent of things to come? If asked, Fel naturally credits the portal god for his strange abilities. Of course, if he's right, the cage and the lady might be in for a plane-shattering shakeup. All right, and that's the story of Fel. He's a Dabu. Before we get too far along, if you're new to the Planescape multiverse, these little goat-looking dudes look like tall, skinny satyrs with extra horns, if you will, are native to Sigil. One way or another, they've been there since before Record has been there. They serve at the will and the whim at the whim of the Lady of Pain. If they're ever messed with, instantly the Harmonium, the governors, any law-abiding factions will jump to their defense, because no one wants to piss off the Lady of Pain. If you kill a Dabu and they don't get you, the faction don't get you, she will. That's not going to a maze. That's turning into a pile of goo. And typically the pile of goo includes anyone near the pile of goo, so it's just bad news to mess with these guys. They do not speak per se, but when a Dabu is communicating with not a player or another non-player character, a non-Dabu, symbols appear above their head, almost like the cartoon bubble. It's a little bit silly, but that's the way it was written. And Fel is unique in that he can turn his symbols into illusions and some of these symbols and illusions can be turned into tattoos and patterns placed upon the player character, or non-player characters, as you will. So the story itself is also exploring the depth of the belief system within Sigil. The Lady of Pain is considered the ultimate authority in the city, but there's been challenges to her in the past. The thing of Eoskar and the representative of him is kind of a recurring theme through the second edition production run of Planescape. Gave the DMs the opportunity to shift things up if they needed to as your players grew in power. But those are big picture views. If you're role-playing Fel here, he is silent, but he's extremely expressive with his eyes, gesture, and body language. He's chosen his path in life as a content, accepting everything that comes along with his decision. Although he's approachable, he enjoys the air of mystery and rebellion that surrounds him. Most people won't have anything to do with the guy, including fighting. He's never going to be an aggressor, but if he's attacked, he would, both use his blowgun to defend himself and bring down powerful symbols into life, referring back to where we had a Merilith, a very high-level demon, brought to life. So Fel is capable of literally summoning things into his symbols, creating symbols, and then summoning those into physical being as necessary. No one knows the extent of this power. It's up to me and you as the Dungeon Masters to decide on that. Now, for our players, he can be a nice and simple source of not necessarily information, because most people avoid him, most natives of Sigil. Magical tattoos, magical runes, the occasional bigger piece that they can't find amongst the standard factions or amongst their normal ways of contact. But Fel is in and out of his own unless you're using the larger Eoscar return themes in your campaign. He's likely to serve as little more than a side attraction, a fun one, an interesting non-player character. And this is kind of one of those guys that your players will either be like, and get on with their lives. They're like, oh my god, he's really cool. Can we hang out with him? So be prepared for that kind of a shift. And because of the power level, I guess you could say, you're going to have to manage the dispensation of his symbols into tattoos appropriate to your campaigns. Typically, from on my experience, I've used him more as a sideshow attraction and a source of the magical tattoos. When running 5th edition, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything brought the tattoos into the game, and all of a sudden it's like you're mid-campaign. Why can't we have magical tattoos? Well, Fel fixed that for me nice and simply. And it might be a fun way to get your players into Sigil. Yeah, we don't do magical tattoos down here on Bob's planet, but rumor has it there's some weirdo guy up in Sigil that can make a tattoo become magical. And there you go. Lo and behold, you have an impetus to move your party to the Outer Planes. But he is useful, but he's very much, again, at the risk of repeating myself, unless you're following the grander theme of there's a disruption of the portal system and the dispensation of the Lady of Pain, he's likely not going to serve as anything more than a one-off, unique, vendor-style NPC. But the story itself is pretty interesting. There is unrest in Sigil. There is still belief that the Lady of Pain is not the one. Eoscar, the god of portals, is still out there. The belief system of Planescape, belief is power. The more belief you have, belief manifests itself in reality on the Outer Planes. So keep that in mind if you want to grow things as well. He can become a bigger NPC should you need that. But hey, thanks for hanging out for this story. The next person will be back for another one here pretty soon. Likes, follows, subscribe, shares, all those kind of cool things are greatly appreciated. Leave something in the comments. Let me know what you think. And hopefully we'll see you for another episode soon. Appreciate you.